Back again, another Friday night.
What's up? What's up? What's up?
In the box. Took off a week, man. New season starting off. What's up with you, D-Ray?
Maintaining, black man. How about yourself?
Hey, man, chilling, bro. Another Friday, man. It sounded like it was a short week this week, man. You know, did we go by fast or slow to you, man?
It went by fast, man. There was a lot. It seemed like a lot happened, and I was very busy. So yeah, it just kind of flew by. I'm looking forward to slowing it down this weekend.
Well, we got a great show, man, playing ahead for you, man. In the box, we got Frasier, man, back. Back here. He gonna be ready, man. We're gonna come back right after this break.
Fundamentals and building blocks. Turn to advice when I'm in that spot. When I got questions, and that's a lot. Perfect time to hear from Rico in the box.
All right, man. All right.
That is still the dopest theme in the history of podcasts.
Hey, bro. We gonna definitely gonna get it in. We glad you guys, man, join us again another Friday, man, and in the box, man. We got a great show for you. First, man, we gonna kind of a little housekeeping. Want to say shout out, man, to J Latrina, man, our casting director, producer, man, in the box. You probably, man, she's our person, man, and she kind of set up the show. She does a lot of things on the show. We got a lot of great things coming to you for this winter session, man. Got a lot of great things as well. And also want to send a shout out, man, to Demi Day, rapper.
Day.
Also, man, artist that she's managed by D-Ray. Talk about your artist there, bro.
Yo. Demi Day. She has a new mixtape and a new video that's going to be dropping in a couple of weeks. Be sure to follow her on Demi Day Official on all of your social media platforms. Be prepared to be amazed.
And shout out to my homie, man, called Deuce, man. Always
Deuce.
there. Go check it out. Deuce. Man, we never go rep no artists over here, man, that don't have no skill set, man.
Believe that.
Like, we don't believe in just to go along and then the pat on the back, man. We want to up the standard, man.
Absolutely.
And then shout out to my other homie, Big Phil.
Big Phil.
Check out Quarantine Dreams. Quarantine Dreams is dope if you have not heard it already. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. And then at the same time, man, if you haven't had an opportunity to watch any of our shows, you can actually go to Roku and Amazon Fire Stick. This is going to be the pick on both platforms. If you want to see some previous shows, you can feel free, man, to go to Amazon, Roku. We're on there as well. And then, too, if you're interested, man, in getting your song mix, man, I'll mix your song, man, $8.50 per stem, right? Keep it affordable for you, man. And if you're looking for some sound, you're looking for that professional sound, man, I definitely can help you as well, man. And then master, man, at $10, 2-hour turnaround time. If you get it to them the same day, get you dope as well, man. And then, man, we got two. I want to talk about Cyberpunk. Dropping November the 19th. D-Ray, what you think about that, bro?
Hey, I'm looking forward to it, man. Being a gamer, I'm curious. Is this going to be just for the new systems? Is it going to be back? Because I guess in the world of gaming, I got a little jalopy there, a little Xbox One. So man, mine got some duct tape on it. So I'm hoping.
The 2770 stick, I think you're gonna be able to play it on the Xbox One, man.
Dope.
It's gonna be enhanced if you have the Xbox X, I presume. Obviously, it's new that's dropping, and also Watch Dogs Legion dropping October 29th. Now I played Watch Dogs Legion 1, and it wasn't really that fun, man. It was all right, man. It wasn't, not nothing that I say I remember, man. But without further ado, man, we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring in Frasier, man. What's happening, bro?
Yes, sir. What's going on, man? How you brothers doing?
Frasier, a.k.a. Von Wick.
Yes, sir.
I see that Jamaican flag up in the back there. But y'all got some curry goat up in there, bro?
Hey.
You know, got to represent, man.
What you want?
You already know.
Hey, man, listen, long time coming. Glad to have you on the show, man.
Yes, sir.
Von Frasier, man. We definitely, man. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, man. For those that may not even know who Von Frasier is.
Yeah, I formerly went by Javon McKenzie, which is my first and middle name. And yeah, man, just a rapper, just passionate about the Black community, passionate about just bringing change in the world. You know what I'm saying? Having a good time. Y'all know I'm those who know me, I'm very funny, but really just overall, man, I'm a rapper. That's what I do. That's what I wake up to do is live to make music, live to listen to music, and just try to do it as best as I can, man.
That's what's up, bro. I know definitely, man. If you guys don't know of Von Frasier, man, he's one of like my number one go-to artists that I partnered with, man. We've done a couple albums together, and we actually also, man, did Crooked 10, right? If you haven't had an opportunity to check out Crooked 10, this album, really, man, we did this album in 2017, but this album really was ahead of its time. I think it was like 4 years ahead of itself. And I think if you go back and you listen to Crooked 10 now, it really speaks, man, to the time that we in. If you want to check it out, you can listen to it free. You go right there to ricogibson.bandcamp.com. You can check it out, man. Then you can check out my production, man, my mixing and master. I produced the album, I mixed and mastered, I recorded it. Javon wrote to it, did everything. We got special guest appearance by Big Phil. Who was with it? And oh, I forgot. It was narrated by Show Barack.
That's right. Shout out to the homie Show.
What's
Yeah,
up,
man.
Show? To the
Yeah,
homie, man.
that album. You want me to speak on it?
Yeah. Speak on it, man. Speak on the album, bro.
Yeah, man. I remember. I remember. Just making that album, and the biggest inspiration was when they look at the cover. There's a child on there, Aiden McClendon. He was actually murdered here in Jacksonville. Straight bullet. The killer was was trying to shoot another family member and ended up hitting him. I think he got hit by more than one bullet, and he ended up dying. I believe it was the next day. So I know his auntie and his grandma and them, and so a little bit, but I've been knowing his auntie for years. And so, yeah, man, that just really hit me hard. And I just really wanted to do something that would dedicate and just always try to keep his memory alive. You know what I'm saying? Especially now that I have a son. It hits me even harder now than when I did the album. You know what I'm saying? So that was pretty tough, man. And so, when I do music, I always try to represent and let people know, we know about the Trayvons and the Mike Browns and everybody, which we never want to forget. But I also want to let people know, even from the hands of Black on Black violence, that those are victims too, and that they're not forgotten either. You know what I'm saying? So I try to keep his name alive through the music and whatnot.
We did a song, man, called Older Aiden, man. But I want to talk about this album cover, real, because you got a lot of stuff happening in the album cover, dude. Like,
right.
Talk about, Duval County, Bangham.
Right.
Why do they call it the Bangham here, bro? For people that don't know what the Bangham is, because we all over the world.
Hey, man, it's real out here, man. You go to the West Coast, of course, where I'm originally from. You got the Bloods and Crips. You got heavy gang violence, and out here, man, it's more like, you have turfs and stuff, but a lot of it's just every man for himself. Man, every man is their own gang, and you run into the wrong side of town or the wrong person. And a lot of artists, even though coming from other cities, from Miami, Tampa, different stuff, Duval is very serious when it comes to repping their turf, man. And so it's a lot of violence, a lot of Black on Black violence, JSO, the police. They're terrible as far as their policing and things like that, man. So you get it from both sides, man. So that's why it's the Bangham down here. It's a war zone for real.
And what do you think is a part of the Black on Black problem? I know we got, because as a Black man, I always say all the time, man, we're fighting two wars. Like we fight against white supremacy, but we also fight against other Blacks that hate Blacks, man. Like and that's the deal. But in your own perspective, man, what do you think? We know where the white supremacy, we understand that, but let's talk about, man, the Black, the Black violence on, is it, because I hear arguments, there is no Black on Black, because obviously there's white on white crime.
Right.
But what is it that make us hate? I know it's evil, right? We talk about that, you know what I'm saying? But
that's the cliche, right?
But talk about it. What makes that happen, bro? So we got a comment here already.
Yeah. Well, first,
Put on, sis.
I think you hit the nail on the head, man. It's like a quarter. You know, you have heads and tails, like a coin. You know, you have the heads on one side, tails on one side. So you have on one spectrum, there's white supremacy, and on the other spectrum, there's what we do to each other. And so I always try to, when I talk about these conversations, they're very nuanced, but I always try to focus on making sure that I talk about both sides, you know, because it's not all black on black. And of course, we know that is just a term that a lot of whites use to kind of deflect from what they do to their own community and what they do to our community. So really, it's just proximity. So because you have blacks in neighborhoods with other blacks, those are the crimes that are being committed. You have people in Jacksonville that never left the east side. You got people that's never left the north side. You got people that's never left Jacksonville. So, and you have that around the world. Everybody doesn't get to travel. Everybody's never been on, there's a lot of people that haven't been on planes, buses, stuff like that, right? So anyway, from the black on black side, or from what we do to ourselves in-house, of course, like I said, the white supremacy, but to bring it a little deeper, there's always been, even historically, even when racism and stuff was going on, there's always been there's been a need for one of them is white affirmation. I always tell people the biggest drug to hit the black community was not crack cocaine, it's white affirmation. You know what I'm saying? So as bad as drugs are.
Now, white affirmation. I want you to talk about white affirmation.
Okay.
Talk about that.
So basically, the need to feel like you need to be accepted by white people, to the point to where you're willing to do anything, or to the point where you feel validated, right? So if Rico or D-Ray, whoever tells me that I'm dope, then it's like, oh, okay, cool. But if a white man tells me the same thing, it's like, now my ears are open, or now I'm ready to, now I feel validated. Where I could be a black lawyer, but if I'm a black lawyer on the white firm, then I feel like, I feel like that token, that like, oh my goodness, they really accepted me, right? You see that in a lot of churches, you see that in a lot of organizations. And so the white affirmation of just needing to be accepted to the point where it's detrimental to you and it's detrimental to your community. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be accepted, wanting to be liked. We all, to a certain extent, have that. But when it goes to, you look at Martin Luther King, you look at Malcolm X, you look at people in their camps, there's always been somebody black that was willing to dime somebody out, whether that was for money, whether that was just for the purpose of saying, the government or Uncle Sam looking at them different. You've always seen that in what we typically know as the house Negro, right? You had the slaves in the field that were working, and then you had the house Negro that felt like he wasn't a slave because he was sleeping in the master's house. He was a slave too, but he just had better treatment. So he would keep watch over the slaves. He would snitch, wait a minute.
No, stay right there for a second.
Right.
That sounds like a fantasy, bro. It don't even sound like that's true, bro. Like that is that a part of history, bro? Is that really true, bro? Is that really a thing, bro? Because it sounds like you just made that up.
I wish it was the HBO Max special, you know what I'm saying? Okay. Or a Netflix thing that I could binge. But yeah, it's definitely true. Blacks coming from, going back to the slave days, and enduring what we did. And so you had what the master did was they separated father from the home. They broke up the home early, and then that became the tradition. And so you had a lot of times you had the black mother who was, whether she slept with the master or did whatever to keep her child safe. And then you had the father who would be out in the field all the time, where he couldn't be a father, or he would be sent to another plantation. And so this started to go down through what we call black trauma or trauma, where the woman would be in the home, single parent. That kind of set the foundation, you know what I'm saying? And so even with all that, blacks were still able to persevere. And we were still a tight-knit community after slavery, after all that type of stuff, even through the Jim Crow era. And then once the war on drugs and crack cocaine and stuff hit our communities, that's when you saw like the paradigm shift. That's when you saw like the major setback, where it's like, not only are we being systematically oppressed, but now we're being systematically oppressed and we don't have unity. And I think that's the biggest difference now, why you're seeing what you're seeing. Because in the 60s, you didn't see, yes, you had fights and you had blacks that would, every now and then would kill blacks, but it wasn't a war zone where you just saw the clear hatred, you know what I'm saying? And now, because of that lack of unity and blacks feeling like, even in Jacksonville, I use Jacksonville specifically, there's such a crab in the bucket mentality. basically every man is for themselves, not willing to pull their brother up, not willing to love their brother or walk alongside their neighbor. Everybody's trying to be, I got to be the man. I got to make it out of Jackson. I got to put Jackson on a map, to the detriment of their community. You know what I'm saying? So you got crabs in a bucket. They all trying to pull each other down to get out. And so nobody gets out.
So this is, I want to ask you this question. Music wise, we know I've heard the term and I believe it, but I want to hear your perspective on music being weaponized. You know, do you think that's far-fetched, or do you think that's, you know, that's a real thing? And if you think it's a real thing, talk a little bit about how music is being weaponized against the urban community.
Right. So yeah, another nuanced question. I definitely think that music can and has been is being weaponized. I think two sayings are true. Both are true, that life imitates art, art imitates life, right? So there is that perspective that where the rappers today are imitating what they see in reality, right? But there's also a sense in where you have a lot of these kids. I think even Juice WRLD said it, to where he, he started doing drugs and stuff because he heard Future songs and stuff like that. And so I do think there's a double entendre, in a sense. There's a double influence, a double negative, to where life is imitating art, art is imitating life. And so with that, you have these record execs and you have different people at the top who they don't necessarily care about you or me or our skin color, whatever. They care about the green, which is the mighty dollar, right? And so because of that, they're willing to sign any artist who's willing to, to promote selling drugs, to promote women degrading, especially Black women, degrading women, disobeying your parents, whatever it is that they're promoting that's negative, that's detrimental to our community. They're willing to promote that because that doesn't get people thinking. That doesn't get people to unify and say, hey, how can we bring change? That's not a threat, basically. What I always tell people is that when you look at a lot of these artists and even people in Hollywood, they're not necessarily threats. And the Black community as a whole is not necessarily a threat to the higher powers. And so because they're not a threat, and because everybody is, again, that crab in the bucket mentality and that mentality of like, I just want to make money, right? Because you think about it, when we see Trayvon Martin or somebody get gunned down, D-Ray, Rico, y'all can testify, we feel like that could have been our son or our brother or whatever, right? Because there's a sense of, even though with all the stuff going on, there's still somewhat of a sense of unity, because that's how we were bred, the Black community. When something happens to somebody white, it's always individualized. They don't see it as a holistic, you know what I'm saying? When somebody white shoots up a movie theater, even though it happens so often that, you see mass shootings, they don't look at it as like, this is white, this is a white thing, this is whiteness, this is from the white community. But when somebody Black does something for whatever reason, it always represents our entire community, right? So to go back to the music, it's the same thing. When you have people who are just trying to make it out, and they've been disenfranchised, they've been marginalized or oppressed to one degree or another, whether it be by police, the system, etc. And then they get a little money, well, they want to wild out. And so you have, I think it was Kendrick Lamar who said it on, what was that, To Pimp a Butterfly, where he was talking about Lucy, which represented Lucifer, the devil, right? And then you had where on the first track, he was talking about like where he was Uncle Sam, and he was basically saying, get your money, you go to the mall, spend it all, stuff like that. Basically saying like, yo, I can, you can do all this stuff. Like, man, I have you tap dancing, man, I'll put you in front of the world, almost like what Satan did with Christ. I'll show you the world, the kingdoms of the world, and hey, you could have a man, just serve me. And so that's how I feel like the industry uses a lot of Blacks. It's like,
froze up there.
And you would see that, wow, well, they don't really think much of Black women, according to the music. So there is that level of weaponizing.
So I want to ask you this question, and there's been a lot of talk. I know at one point, man, you was in the reform, because I met you back 2008, right? And I remember you coming.
You met me before the internet, bro.
Way before the internet, man. And I remember when IV, man, brought you into my studio. I had a big studio off of Beach Boulevard, and you come through, man, and this cat, man, spitting. I've seen a huge transformation. The thing is, man, from one perspective, they're brethren, because that's brothers that know you, don't know you, but we see a lot of issues in the church when it comes to white evangelicals, and even with us, even in blacks in the church, we don't like to kind of talk about the truth. We run from it. We deflect from it. Why? Because when you cut on the news, you see all these things happen, right?
Mhm.
You know, if you're living in life, you see situations that people have. Why is it that we in the church, man, we're afraid to talk about, if it's a real situation, man, we go to scripture, but we don't want to acknowledge the situation. But yet, when we put gas in our car, we don't pray to put if we don't pray and put spiritual gas in the car. We physically take a gas pump and we physically have to take that take that nozzle off the pump after we unscrew our door or the top of the pump, and we physically have to take this pump and put it in there, but
Right.
we're acknowledging that we're pumping an actual tangible item in that pump. But when it comes to problems and dealing with solutions, but before you can get a solution, let's talk about why it's an issue that we can't talk about in the church and how it's affecting the community.
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back to just conditioning. Like I was saying, even whether it be white affirmation, you also have in religious circles where, on the one hand, they talk about transparency, but they don't actually believe that. Just like they talk about we need to reach lost people, or whatever you want to call them, sinners, people that are outside the four walls. They say that, but then when you bring those type of people in, then there's the funny looks, there's the stares, there's the gossip, there's things like that, right? So it's almost like they want to have something that looks tangible or feels tangible without actually having the reality. I think there's a verse in the scripture where it talks about always learning, but denying the power, or having a form of godliness, but denying his power, right? And so you have a mass segment of society, especially here in the States with Western Christianity and things like that, where everybody is about wanting to put on that mask, not keeping it real, to the point where it's like, because if you keep it real, they say that, but then they use that against you. Next thing you know, they're kicking you out, or they're gossiping about you. They using prayer to spread your business, whatever it is, right? So when it comes to these issues, they want to be able to the matrix. They want to be able to stay in the matrix. For any of us that saw that movie, you remember with Neo, where he thought he was in reality. And he ended up, he was asking Lawrence Fishburne, like, yo, like, why did my eyes hurt? He said, because you never used them before. And I remember the one guy he killed, I forgot who it was, but the white guy in there, he knew that he was in the Matrix, but he knew the food was fake, but he would rather stay in the Matrix and continue living a lie than to actually face the truth, because the truth was more fearful. He was more fearful of the truth than of the false reality that he was in. You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of people in society, in religion, in these churches today, they are afraid of the truth. So, for example, when you talk about racism, like, if we really break down what racism is, it's much more deeper than just somebody trying to burn your house down, or trying to burn a cross down, or throw rocks in your window, or you nigga this, or whatever like that. It's so much deeper than that, right? So one of the ways that they convinced us after the civil rights era, and we were able to vote and things like that, one of the ways that a lot of these churches and society and even our community was able to convince us that these things went away is because they used the easily identifiable things, like, trying to kill you, trying to stop you from voting, different things like that. And so they looked at society and said, look, remember, you couldn't eat at this restaurant, now you can. You couldn't sit in the front of the bus, now you can. You couldn't drink out of this white water fountain, now you can. And they took that as progress. They took that as equality, when in the reality, if you look at history, there's always been, when you think you're taking 2 steps forward, you're really taking 3 steps backwards. You know what I'm saying? There's always been this facade. And so the government and the powers that be, and the people that are running things, they have a way about them. They know how to give you these breadcrumbs to make you feel like it's a victory. They know how to they'll allow you to win a battle, because for them, it's about the war. You know what I'm saying? So they're like, hey, we'll keep winning the war. We'll throw you a bone every now and then. Hey, we'll give you a black president. You know what I'm saying? It'll let you, you'll really be comfortable now. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all feel like y'all came so far, but when you look at the policies, still police killing us, all type of stuff, unfair trials, right? So going back to the church, I think there's a level of what I call it is intellectual, lack of intellectual integrity. And what I mean by that is, when you have a lot of these people that are not believers, that are not believing in God, whether they be agnostic, atheists, etc., a lot of times they bring up realistic, real concerns or real issues that when they say, why do you believe this? Why does God do this? And instead of the believer or whoever saying, you know what, you're right, or instead of them giving a good answer, they want to go back to either cliches or they want to live in this false reality, right? So they don't want to acknowledge, like, you know what, you have a point. Like, hey, man, this does kind of, when I'm reading the Bible, hey, man, this does kind of seem jacked up, right? So I always tell people, and this is, if y'all don't know anything else or hear anything else tonight, hear this. I always tell people, just because I believe in God doesn't mean I agree with God. You know what I'm saying? So I always tell people, I always believe in God. I don't always agree with God. And my disagreement with God does not make God wrong. It doesn't make me right. It just means I either don't understand or I just don't agree. You know what I'm saying? When you look at the plight of blacks in America, I ask people, I'm like, yo, where's God? Like, I don't like, yo, this is happening. Like, yo, what kind of, this is a really sick world. You know what I'm saying? And of course we can talk about sin and all that stuff. I get it. 2 + 2 is 4. It still don't make sense to me. You know what I'm saying? So it's a thing that I have to wrestle with, but it doesn't mean that my faith in God is gone. But when you have people question that, people don't want to deal with those realities. So they either have to hit them with cliches or they have to ignore it and say, well, yeah, man, that's just that evil in you. You know, you need that demon cast out of, like almost like, what's that movie? Exorcist?
Right.
You need, so you're denying the reality of what's going on. So like you said, so they don't want to talk about real issues. They don't want to talk about sex. They don't want to talk about the gang violence. They don't want to talk about police violence. They don't want to talk about systemic oppression, because then that makes somebody responsible. And if somebody's responsible, then they have an obligation to change. You know what I'm saying? And those people who benefit from that privilege, they don't want to change. They don't want to have one brother said to the privilege, even equality feels like oppression.
Right.
I'm gonna say that again. He said I think it was BJ Thompson. He said, to the privileged, equality feels like oppression. So when you talk about black rights and you have white folks that's like, bro, like, chill out with that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, whoa, well, don't you want us to be equal? It's like, no, really, our equality is basically taken away from their reign or their dominance. And they don't want that. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of churches, to keep the camaraderie, the quote unquote, the false unity, they have to ignore these issues. Don't talk about race. We don't see color here. All the cliches, we just try to focus on God. Jesus didn't see color, even though he created all the different colors and you know what I'm saying, all the time like that, even though he himself is a person of color. But you know what I'm saying?
Now, Chris just said something. Chris jumped in. Chris said, okay, the disagreement is not with God. It is with the people who misrepresent God. Okay.
Right.
Now, I wanna kind of morph everything that you just said.
Right.
And I want to say, as in musically, is there responsibility musically? Now, the argument is, in mainstream, there's a responsibility.
Right.
In the church, we say that's a responsibility, man, to share the gospel, because I hear arguments that even people in the church, they don't want to talk about real things.
Right.
But if you take theology and you put it into a record, and you've done great at that, because we did All Hell and we did some stuff, some dope records.
Right.
But when people don't know what the word of God means, they don't, they don't understand what it means.
Right.
Do you think talking about real life issues on record, truthfully, is a solution? And what about the people that say it's not a solution? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I definitely think that there is a responsibility that every artist has, regardless of what you believe. Number one, I think that there is a certain level of, as an artist, there is a certain level of freedom of expression, creativity, and things like that, right? So every artist is going to, their worldview is going to come out, right? So when you have an artist that says, I rap about killing black men for a living, but in person, I really don't believe in that stuff, right? Well, he's showing you his character, right? his character. So even though he may not be about that life where he's trying to kill somebody in real life, that's still what's in him. That's what's birthed in him, and that's what he feels like it's okay to get money. Just like you have the dope dealer that feels like, hey, I can poison my community because at the end of the day, man, I'm trying to feed my family, right? It's basically the same thing. And so everybody has a certain level of responsibility, especially depending on their worldview. So if their worldview is that of, well, shoot, it's just entertainment, I'm just having fun. They always say that, but then when somebody, Pookie or Ray Ray get killed, then we want to talk about stop the violence. So where was that? Where was that before? So if your music is just music, don't be talking about that now. Like just make music, right? So I believe that everybody has a responsibility. I think that when it comes down to religious undertones or overtones and things like that, I think the main thing really what it comes down into music, and this is why I kind of made my shift, was at the end of the day, whether you're being explicit or direct, what does your art reflect and represent? Is your art something that we can look at and say, this uplifted society, this uplifted, especially if you're Black, did this further our community, or did it pull us back? Because really there is no neutrality. I don't care what you believe. Whether you believe in God or not, there is no neutrality. So either you're pushing for something or you're pushing for something else. You know what I'm saying? So you're either putting us in a positive direction or you're putting us in a negative direction. You know what I'm saying? Is your music, for example, what Black women always bring up, does your music make, and obviously, yes, we're all grown men and women. We know children and teenagers watch too, but even for us grown folks, we all have decisions to make. And me listening to a Tupac record is not an excuse for me to go out and you know what I'm saying? And knock somebody over the head. But at the same time, these are levels of influences. And a lot of us been listening to this music since we were children, right? But with that being said, is that music, is it something that's pushing me forward to do greater things in life, or is it pushing me to do less? And so I always use this example, Boys in the Hood, right? If you want to talk about a movie that is full of violence, full of profanity, full of a lot of things that you could say are wrong in the world, right? And with all that being said, there's nothing in the movie that glorifies violence. It's not a movie. It's a very positive movie, but it's a very negative. It shows a very negative light on things that are negative. You know what I'm saying? It does. You don't leave the movie like, man, I want to get shot like old boy. You know what I'm saying? Like,
but
man,
I know a lot of people in the church, man, have seen that movie, and they say they never seen that movie. See that this is the thing. This is the thing, right? How can we? Because I think that we're not effective. Now we're not effective in the church.
Right.
Obviously, there's a tide that's rolling right now across the land, right? And it's a big divide. And I was waking up, I was up today, and something just kind of hit me.
Right.
And I was saying to myself, man, here we are as a Black people. We've been through a lot of things as a people. Right. But I also know that we have a lot of white supporters that support the Black movement.
Right.
That if because I start looking at the percentages, because every white person, man, don't hate us. Right. There's a I would say the power, the people that have the influence of the country, right? But there's a large group of people that if something went down, I know there's a lot of white people, man, that'll support, because there was in every movement with Martin Luther, with Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, there was white people that died with him on the front line. So in a sense,
slavery too.
We not by ourselves. Even the slave masters, a lot of the slave masters didn't treat their slaves like the white supremacists did. Right? They didn't even whoop their slaves. Maybe when somebody came around, because they didn't want nobody to know. But my question that I want to, and I'm kind of prefacing to say what I'm about to say.
Right.
How can we become unified, right, and acknowledge the truth, right, instead of running from the truth?
Right.
And how can we, as believers, because arguably somebody will say, well, because now you don't talk about Jesus in every record, that you no longer love Jesus, right? And I like the fact that you said a few minutes ago was that, you're not understanding, you believe that Jesus is real, but you may not agree. There are times in our life, man, when we have to do stuff when we really just don't want to do it.
Right.
But we have to do it. God mandated. You know, He closed every other door, and we got to walk through this door, and we may not even understand why we got to walk through it. And I think that is a very transparent statement. I can't just let that slide and not say, because there's a lot of people in the body of Christ, man, that don't really understand what you just said. It's like, I believe, but I don't agree. And if they sit here and say they agree with everything, they'll be telling a lie. Because sometimes, man, it means you gotta love somebody. When you telling somebody, man, they'll slap you in your face, you turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
You be like, man,
try Jesus, don't try me.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? My point that I'm making though is that's humanity.
Right.
That's a person wrapped in humanity. And I think what we've gotten from in the church, we've gotten from the truth of our humanity. We pretend like we're superheroes. And I know personally, I've been trying to be better. I've been trying to treat people better. You know, just because somebody's different than me, you know, now I'm gonna control my space. I'm Rico. Let's Rico all day long, right? But I have to understand and accept people that everybody's not like me. Everybody don't think like me. How can we build a body up, and how can we build a world up, you know, without having to be cliquish and alienating people? Is that even possible, or is that a forever divide?
Yeah. Another really good question. I think it goes back to what you said, truth. And that's the thing that, even Mike, the late great, the greatest ever, Michael Jackson, when he said, I'm starting with the man in the mirror, right? So there has to be a certain level of personal reflection and personal self accountability first, right? Self-governing, of telling the truth to yourself and then allowing that to spew outward. So I think a lot of times, even when you look at the black and white divide, right? A lot of times white folks get offended because when you talk about racism, they think that you're saying that, well, this white person is a terrible person. And what they're not realizing is like, yo, you benefit from a system. Nobody's saying you did it, but truth calls us to reflect, to
you
be
in
honest.
general.
Right. I'll give a great example in my opinion, right? So let's say, because I got family, my family is from the Bahamas, right? So let's say, because I got people that own property in Nassau, tons of family that I've never even met before, right? So let's just say they had a history, hundreds of years. They've tortured people, they've ruined lives, they've raped men and women, abused children. They did whatever evil you can think under the sun, right? I'm not gonna come out and be like, man, y'all tripping, man. Like, I ain't do that. Why y'all mad? I'm gonna be like, man, hey, listen, hey, don't hold me accountable, man. Them jokers crazy. You know what I'm saying? like, hey, man, I got this inheritance, man. I inherited this money and I want to do good in the world, man. I apologize. I would be so apologetic. Yes, I didn't do it, but I still feel a sense of responsibility because this is my lineage. This is where I came from. I'm a benefactor of this nonsense. You know what I'm saying? Of this inhumanity that has happened, inhumane things that have happened to humans, right? So there's a certain level of accountability, even in the business world. When you take over a business, you take over the debt too. If you inherit a business, they don't say, well, hey man, you wasn't here for the 50 years that we was irresponsible, man. So we ain't gonna hold you accountable to this debt. Like, no, homie, this debt is yours too. You know what I'm saying? The name, the logo, the buildings, all that stuff, the debt is yours too. And so there has to be a certain level of accountability to where it's like, we're not saying that all white people or et cetera. What we're saying is, like, I think Rico, you said it earlier, it's the powers that be, and it's a small percentage, but they have all the power, they have all the wealth. And so because of that, there has to be a certain level of honesty. Not only that, but even when it comes to blacks, I think that Martin Luther King and a lot of people, they love to quote, evangelicals love to quote, I have a dream, and all that stuff is great, right? But they don't want to quote the Martin Luther King that said, when he talked about integration, and he said, I feel like I'm leading my people into a burning building. When he started to realize, wait a minute, black people need to go ahead.
Now, you got to stop right there.
Yeah.
Because the reason why I want you to stop right there, because when we look at segregation, right, and when we look at what's happening right now with the pandemic, right, people have become so dependent on other people. Right. When integration happened, because I think when people, and it's important for us to talk about this, because I think when people shoot this down, I don't think they really understand the whys to why when integration happened, Black business suffered, right?
Right.
Because during that time, Black people and white people could not work together, right?
Right.
Everything was segregated, right? You couldn't get those type jobs,
right,
because they kept everybody separate. So Black people were forced to have to buy from each other, right? And when integration happened, and I know this is an argument, and only because I'm a history buff, you're a history buff, and these are some things, man, people don't like to talk about. But because of integration, monopolies happen, capitalistic mindset happened. It's just like somebody who has a business and say, okay, well, I'm making $2,000, you making, I'm making 10 grand, but you making 3 grand, but your life is a whole lot better with that 3 grand versus my 10 grand. And I want to take that 3 grand and I want to give you $500 because I want to make you dependent on me so that I can manipulate and control. Right. How do you feel? Because I understand now, as a Black guy that has a business, I'm just not going to do business with a person just because they're Black. Because if I need to buy a set of tires for my car, and you selling tires and your tires don't look good and you ain't got a good price, I don't care if you Black. I ain't going to do business with you.
It's got to be good business, yeah.
So talk about that, because when I hear a lot of people, man, talk about, man, you got to buy Black. But because I remember, man, I was trying to support this brother, man. He was selling Dickies at the time. My son 19 now, but at the time he was having a uniform. And, we had the Dickie outlet down off of 95 that we could ride down to. The shorts there, man, were $21. Right? You selling shorts were almost $40. I think it was $38. Right? For a pair of shorts. Now, the argument that I hear all the time is you just should give it to him because he's Black. No, that's stupid to me because I'm a businessman. That don't compute. Right? Unless I know him. Unless I know him, he my neighbor, or I'm mentoring him or something like that. That's some other type of. But on a business standpoint, I'm just not going to give you $40 when I can get a half price. So talk about that dichotomy and why the argument shouldn't be against a person that just want the best deal versus them having a skin. Now, why is that important?
Right. Yeah. You made some good points. Number one, I think the mindset, as we always hear these terms woke and conscious and things like that, and those terms a lot of times are thrown around. People don't really know what goes into that. Like I tell people that I'm awake, I'm being awakened, I'm constantly learning, right? So I'm never at the place of where I feel like I've arrived, where I'm just so conscious, you know what I'm saying? I'm being more and more consciously awakened to certain things, right? So it's a process. So when a Black person is becoming conscious or woke or these terms, when they're starting to understand, if they don't already understand how economics, group economics and economics and just society, the economic gap between whites and Blacks and all other cultures and things like that, when they start to understand that, I think number one, the mindset should be to strategically say, look, my passion is to support Black folks. That's number one, right? Doesn't mean that every time I go out the store or online, I'm just only going to support Black people, right? Because number one, it's a process. You don't just wake up. We don't even have outlets like that to where, I think it was Killer Mike, if you watch his documentary on Netflix, even just in the city of Atlanta, he was like, okay, I'm only going to support, he was showing a point. I'm only going to support buy things that are Black owned. And it was so hard for him just in that city as big as Black, metropolis, all that stuff. It was hard for him to even survive, just getting, he had to walk because he couldn't get the white rented car, you know what I'm saying? So as much Black businesses and things are opening up, that we still have a lot of progress. We still have a long way to go. And so I think the goal for every Black person should be, number one, to say, yes, I want to support Black businesses. But number two, like you said, the key word is business. So we want to have good business, and we want to be responsible and respectful. Like me and my family, we went to a store on, I think it was 103rd. It was a shoe store, black owned. And we ended up walking out because when we walked in, you know, the two people that worked there, they just kind of looked at us, and we were there like, yo, we're here to support your store. You can't say hello. You can't ask us if we need anything. It's just like you on your phone. Like, bro, like I'm not here begging. And even if I was, I'm still a human being, right? But I'm actually here with my hard-earned money, and I'm willing to buy these shoes that we've been looking for. And so they didn't speak. And so we like, okay, look, hey, y'all that's not how y'all do things. Okay, cool. We're not going to patronize your business. Like, we're not going to use the whole black power. Now it's like, no, if it's black power, then show me love. You know what I'm saying? Like it's, you know, I was 16 working at Publix. It was my first official job, and they taught us customer service, things like that. And I'm like, bro, I was 16. You got 30 and 40-year-olds, or you go into a drive-through or a line in Walmart or whatever, and don't know how to say hello. You know, don't know how to speak to you. And it's just common. It's not even a business thing. It's just common decency. You know what I'm saying? You interact with a person, don't just
You
put change
know,
in my hand, say hello, say something, right? And so you have a lot of things like that. So if you're not professional, if your stuff is not good, you know, don't just be like, well, you know, you got pancake business and nobody's supporting your business, but your pancakes taste like dirt. You know what I'm
D-Ray,
saying?
D-Ray wanted to say something. Go ahead, bro.
Go ahead.
yeah, just jumping in real quick because this has been real good. I'm just reminded of a quote from MLK. MLK said that if you're going to be a garbage man, you know, be the best garbage man. And that was part of the message of the civil rights movement that kind of got lost. You know, economics and business ethics, things of that nature. You know, and you know, I have a history degree, so I'm there with you guys being a history buff. And I hate to sound pessimistic, but I am not a believer in that popularized version of unity anymore. I kind of feel like slavery killed it. I kind of feel like integration killed it. But what I am a believer of is being on the side of right.
Right.
And what that means is that it doesn't matter about your skin color. It just matters, do you have ethics? Because like somebody just alluded to in the comments, all skin folk ain't kin folk.
Right.
I like what Chris just said. Chris said part of the problem is we have to train our young people to be producers versus consumers. The more entrepreneurs we have, the more chances we have to support Black businesses. And absolutely right, absolutely right. And I think, you know, I wanna cut, and I want to go to, because D-Ray, man, we got a couple news things, man, that we're gonna share. And you ready, D-Ray? You on that thing, man?
Wow, that is really official. Okay, so first news.
Make you want to have a suit on.
I know, right? Make me want to get my Ted Koppel on. So Twitch, the streaming platform, who happens to still be unlicensed by the major labels, they're launching a rights-cleared music via deal with independent distributors and labels. So basically, what that means is that if you have an indie label or independent distributor, they're trying to get music cleared so that those independent labels can have their music streamed on the platform. I feel like this is a good move if you're an independent artist, but it also has some pitfalls in it. And as far as, you know, especially now that, you know, the new rules have kicked in and Facebook has pretty much kicked DJs off of the platform from live streaming. I still feel like this might have a few pitfalls in it. So I wanted to put that out there. What do you guys think? Especially you, Vaughn, being an independent artist. What do you think about entering into some kind of a deal where your music is on this particular platform?
I think it can be good. I think independent, especially today in 2020, I think the goal should be more independence. Going back to what the gentleman said about entrepreneurs versus consumers, I think ownership, independence, I think that's a good thing. I think that we have there's enough people in the world where everybody can kind of have their own thing. Like there's a ton of rappers, ton of producers, ton of everything, right? But at the end of the day, only few stand out, few are far in between, you know, where there's greatness and there's people that, you know, really just have a difference. You know, there's a reason why we love the Pacs and the Nas and the Nipseys and, you know, Kendricks and J. Cole, you know what I'm saying? Different people like that. There's a reason why there was just something unique and different about them. So if we could take that independence, because remember in the 90s, not only did you have, what was it, Analog, Rico? Where they were recording on, you know, where it was like you had to be in this, like if you did a record with Pac, you literally did a record with, you know what I'm saying? With Pac. Like it wasn't like they flew in your verse. This was a verse from another song. Like, no, you were in the studio, you know, he came up to the floor, whatever. And so with that, you know, the labels did everything. You know, it was a time where they doing the promotion. You may have wrote your record, but man, they spinning that on the radio. They doing the artist had little to no control, not only from a business standpoint, but just the technology, right? They didn't have the Twitters and the YouTubes and the free avenues, the Facebooks that we can put out something and something could just go viral. Like it had to take a label that got behind you and said, we're going to go, we choose to make you viral, right? Now the labels don't necessarily choose to make you viral. It's like the people decide. Almost like how the government is supposed to be, where it's supposed to be we the people, and you have public service, but that's, you know, that's neither here nor there. But that's how the music industry is kind of now, where it's like it's more in the hands of the people, the consumer, to be able to say, hey, this is the type of sound, or this is what we want from the artists.
The reason why I'm glad you the last statement that you made is so huge, and I kind of want to talk about just how, not necessarily the Tory Lane situation or whether he is guilty or not guilty, but the fact that they tried to cancel him. He dropped the video, man. He actually, man, I was sitting there watching, man. He had 6 million views. Like from 6 million, it started climbing like 500,000 like every minute. right? It up to 11 million in only a day on Twitter for 11 million. So I think with cancel culture can't exist unless the people say it exists.
Right.
And I think the power should be back in the people. And I think as an independent artist, it forces you to get down and to get to know your audience.
Right.
You know, allow your audience, man, to come into your life, so to speak, to touch you, so to speak.
Right.
Because, you know, Tory's fans prove you ain't gonna cancel him. You know, and Meg dropped the song. You know, yeah, it got 2 million, but it didn't blow up. It didn't go fast like Tory's. So I say that to say, you know, the power is shifting, and so, you know. But go ahead, Dan. I know you had another one. That was it.
Yeah. No. I got another one, but this one also speaks to artist independence. There's a digital distribution firm called Amuse that took a survey, and they found that while independent artists increased their output during the COVID lockdown, direct to fan opportunities they feel like are still being underutilized. And so what does that mean? That means that, yeah, a lot of independent artists, because they had no other alternative, were producing a lot more music and a lot more content at home. But they're still going through CD Baby. They're still going through DistroKid. They're still going through Ditto and TuneCore. But they're not really doing any direct to fan, merch or merchandise or whatever. And so I put this question out there. Why do you think there's such a hesitation in independent artists going completely independent? Bypassing all digital platforms and just saying, hey, if you rock with me, you want this music, you want this T-shirt, this is the only place you can get it.
Right.
You want to go first? Because I want to go second. Go ahead and go first.
Okay, yeah. So I would just say, yeah, man, that's another good question. I think that, again, going back to like we were saying earlier, conditioning, because we've been so taught to rely on the system. So as long as there is those opportunities out there, we're going to feel like, hey, we need to use those. And especially, I think even if somebody starts off like that and then they start to get a bigger platform, because a lot of these guys, I'm like, yo, like if you signed a 1 album, 2 album deal, like the popularity that you got, you good. Like you've built a fan base to where like your fan base ain't gonna turn on you because you're like, yo, man, my new album's out and it ain't with Warner Brothers. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they support you. But I think what happens is, you know, you get used to, you get comfortable. It's almost like, you know, even like if somebody's staying in your house where it's like, you know, hey, you like, yo, you got 3 months, you know, to get your stuff together. And then they get comfortable. And now it's like, you know, you're so used to that. You don't want to take that risk to be like, hey man, now it's not as important to you because you're comfortable, you're eating, you may not even be making millions of dollars, but now it's like, do I really want to just have it to where it's just my website and you buy my music through there instead of having all these other outlets? I think there's pressure in that area, because there are some people that's like, look, I'm a Spotify. I've had people myself that's like, look, man, I love your music, man, but I'm Spotify, man. If you get it on Spotify, I'll bump it. And it's like, bro, if you like my music, you like my music, you know what I'm saying? But I think there's pressure from fans too, because, you know, you have the Apple, you have Tidal, and, you know, you have people that have their own turf, and they're like, look, man, I'll bump it, but I'm only going to bump it on this platform, or I'm only going to bump it on that platform. So I think you have that as well.
Go ahead, Rico, but I got a comment to that.
Well, go ahead and make your comment to that, man.
Yeah, because only thing I'm gonna say about that is going back to history, going back to us being history buffs.
Right.
1865, the end of slavery. Mm-hmm. You had a whole generation of slaves that became sharecroppers.
Right.
Why? Because they went back to the plantation.
New slavery.
Yeah. They wanted to be free, but they didn't really want to be free.
Right.
Hey, now hold on, man. No, you ain't supposed to be in my head. What?
Look. You want to be free, but you really don't want to be free. Yeah, I saw what.
I wasn't trying to be the bad guy in this one, so
no. Hey, it's the truth. I saw what.
Ron took the high road. I was the bad guy.
No, because I know it's convenient and I know what people are saying, but at the end of the day, if you are really, really about your bag, go back to, like you said, the 90s. Go back to the mid 90s, the late 90s. Remember when Prince set up the MPG music store? Mm-hmm. You couldn't get his stuff anywhere but from there, the stuff that he owned the masters to. Mm-hmm. You know, and he proved even, and this was pre iTunes, mm-hmm. that digital music could work.
Right.
You know, so that's just my little comment.
I want to use
his name too.
I want to add something else I'll add a little caveat to that. It takes work being an independent artist. And I believe that a lot of independent artists just are not up for the work.
Right.
Right. You know, it's almost like, you know, when you want to go work a 9 to 5, most people choose a 9 to 5 because it's easy to get up mm-hmm. and go into a job mm-hmm. and do what this person tell you to do and get a check.
Right.
Right. Versus you have to condition yourself. I love that word, condition. Mm-hmm. You have to condition yourself, prepare yourself, sharpen your skill set to go out and get money, right? And although you may only get a little bit to start with, but it may come over time.
Right.
So I think a large part of that is being lazy, being fearful and lazy. Mm-hmm. A lot of independent artists don't really want to work. They want it given to them. And if somebody give you something, you don't have a right. If they're putting that money on you, mm-hmm. you have very little negotiation power. Like now, that's just my 2 cents mm-hmm. on that. You know, now our time is running out, but we always have a tradition. No, we have a tradition on 10. We have a game called 10, and we never tell nobody what it is until we get ready. They kind of start wrapping up. And I put this 10 together based on the person that's on the show. Hold on, Christian said something. He said sometimes when you're independent, you need those outlets because you can't do everything yourself and still put out the highest quality product. Okay, you need those outlets. I'm gonna say you don't need those outlets. I'm gonna say that it's conditioned. Like both of those guys just use a great. I'm just piggybacking off Vaughn and Danny because they both use the word condition. Mm-hmm. And if you condition yourself that you need something, then you're gonna need it.
Right.
You know, because we have the power of the internet. The internet, you know, with us, man, we in Africa, we in Japan, we in Germany, we in Russia, on Roku and Fire Stick TV. You know, we're everywhere, man. So it's about you doing the work.
Right.
You know, you may have to get a plane ticket and go to the UK. You know, get a passport. I know a lot of people get a passport, man, and they go vacationing. But how about getting a passport and just going and networking, getting your hotel room for a week and just networking with some people in the UK if you want to get your music in the UK, and which just happen to be one of my strongest following in the UK.
Look at Hobson.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, so basically you're only a plane ticket away. You can get over there and just have a hotel room, man, for a week and stay there and get out and network and meet people. You know, take a demo of your music or take a couple albums with you, man, and break bread. You still can do that and develop your own network. But guess what? That's work. And I don't think a lot of people, man, want to do that work.
Right.
You know, so but going back to 10, all right. So I'm gonna ask you something. It's gonna be either or, right? You have to choose one. You're not allowed to think about it. If you think about it, I'm gonna eject you off the show. No, I'm just thinking. I ain't gonna do that, man. It's not about, but you just give on the top of your head, man. There's no right or no wrong answer.
All right.
It's just basically we just want to get an opportunity to see how you think, right?
Right.
Malcolm X or Martin Luther King?
X.
Biden or Trump?
Dang. Dang, that's hard. I want to say neither, but if you're gonna make me choose, I might say Trump, bro. I might say Trump, bro.
Big Sean or Young Dolph?
Right now, I don't know too much about Dolph, so I'm gonna say Big Sean. Though I like both of them though.
KB or Derek Minor?
Derek Minor.
Okay. Would you rather have $200 million with 8 years to live or $1 million with 10 years to live?
Say that one more time.
Would you rather have $200 million with 8 years to live or $1 million with 10 years to live?
Give me 2 for 8. 200 for 8.
Porsche truck or Toyota Camry?
Truck.
J. Cole or Kendrick Lamar?
Kendrick.
Dave East or Game?
Game.
Nipsey Hussle or Tupac?
Nipsey. You said Nipsey or Tupac?
Nipsey Hussle or Tupac?
I want anybody else. I would have said Nipsey, man. So with that, I got to go with Pac, man.
Would you rather make $50K a year as an entrepreneur or $100K as an employee?
$50K.
That's it. That's 10. That's what it is.
Crooked 10. Crooked 10.
Crooked 10. Listen, man. Hey, if y'all hadn't heard that album, man, I'm not just saying it because we made it. Man, the album dope, and it actually speaks. I think when I went back, I can't really listen to my music, right?
Right.
I had to be far removed from something I made to go back because when I'm mixing and mastering, I listen to it 1,000 times.
It's so annoying,
and I'm listening to something different. I'm not really listening to the words.
Right.
But now that the album is done and I go back, man, and I put it in the whip and I'm riding when I'm looking at the news and I'm looking at all these things, man, that's happening. Right. And I'm like, man, Vaughn was 4 years ahead. We were 4 years ahead of everybody else. If you had, man, go check out that album, man.
Can I say something real quick on the album?
Go ahead.
What's funny, man, is there's such a great balance of the album, kind of like how we started the show with dealing with both sides of the coin, right? You have the racism, white supremacy, things like that, and you have the things that we do to ourselves, right? But if you really listen to that album, I talk so much more about Black responsibility, but because racism is so heavy and it's such a denial, people will still a lot of times will lead that album like, man, all he do is talk about. But if you really listen to it, and even if you look at like my career, like doing music and stuff like that in the past, I've always held Blacks more accountable than anybody because this is our home. You know what I'm saying? Like, how you holding another family more accountable than you hold your own household? You know what I'm saying? Your own wife and kids or parents or whoever, right? So I've always spoke to the Black community, but I can make 1 or 2 songs that is directing at police or racism, and people will act like that's the whole album. You know what I'm saying? Or like, man, that's all you do, man. He just bad. But if you really listen to the Crooked 10 album, most of those songs on there is dealing with us. It's talking about the gang violence. It's talking about our upbringing. It's talking about economics. It's talking
choices.
About entrepreneurship. Choices, right? So, but when you mention racism and you, like you said, going back to the truth, it's so powerful and it's so real that it makes people think that, man, that's all you talk about.
I say that, man, because when I sit back, when I went back, man, and listen to the album just after just after the pandemic, and we had no idea, man, that they was gonna do the pandemic stuff,
No.
and it just kind of made sense. It made better sense now than it did in 2017 when we made that album.
Right.
And I think, man, it's a great album. It's our, shout out to Show Baraka. Big Phil was blowing on that joint, man.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to them boys.
If you don't want to buy it, you ain't got to buy it. You can go and just stream it, man, listen to it, and let's discuss it, man. What you think? Because I think that's one way, man, that we can create change, man, is dialogue.
Right.
Instead of being mad with your brother, your sister, like have a conversation. Like you have to try and see somebody else's viewpoint.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And being mad with them or trying to shun them, because I like the underdogs, man. What I love about Vaughn, I'm gonna always gravitate to the underdog. Mm-hmm. Whenever I have people, man, that's gonna always try to choose and they want to try to support the most popular person, or they always gonna try to choose. I like the underdogs because I'm an underdog. People are counting me out, and if I had to live by what people said about me when I was coming up, man, I wouldn't have no money. I wouldn't have nothing. I just lay in the bed. Like, so I'm for the underdog. I'm like Danny, like D-Ray. Why I rock with D-Ray? D-Ray is an underdog. You understand? But, you can be an underdog and have skills. So on this show, on this new season, I refuse to have anybody on here that's not dope. Right. I'm not going to pat you on the back. Me and D-Ray, we're going to be doing some coaching. We got some packages, man, we're going to be doing for the independent artists, man. Of course, I'm a producer. D-Ray is a producer. We're going to try to help a lot of you artists, man, that are serious. But we want to try to turn the tide. We want to try to help push you forward, man, with your career and what you're doing. So I want to have people on here that have some substance. Believe it or not, I know some people will go back and watch this video. I know Javon McKenzie, know you know, right? Because I know for a fact he just came over my house with a white brother, right?
Right.
A few days back,
right?
He got white supporters, right? So he don't hate white people. So that's a lie, right? I said all that to say,
hey, I got white grandparents. Believe it or not, man, I had white adopted grandparents, bro.
The thing that
my family.
The thing that I love about you, man, is you willing to have a conversation,
right? And
if you try to have a conversation with a guy that has this intelligent, like I'm super smart, like everybody up here is super smart, right? And if you try to have a conversation with either one of us and you don't know what you're talking about, it's not going to fare well, right? Because we'll start pulling data, and we'll start the 100-round drum, bro. Listen, we'll start pulling data, we'll pull history, we'll pull the tapes. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You ain't gonna win that argument. So you gotta know what you're doing. Listen, talk about Black Coffee. I know the time is up, but talk about Black Coffee and, man, what you're doing. Oh, and we all working on a new project. We're going to have a new project coming that's going to dwarf Crooked 10. Trust me. We're going in, taking the gloves off. But go ahead, bro. Talk about Black
definitely. Coffee. Black Coffee on the Moon, really what it is, man, it's just a little podcast, a little vlog thing I do on YouTube, a little show I do. And it really just represents Black coffee, just rawness, just me being Black, just from a Black worldview, perspective of me personally, Vaughn's view. That's why I named it Black Coffee on the Moon, Vaughn's View. And I just kind of like what you brothers are doing, man, just trying to give people platforms and just really just speaking my mind on a lot of issues. And, with social media, a lot of times tone can get lost in, or your message can get lost in people perceiving a tone on social media, Twitter, whatever. And so what I wanted to do was, a lot of these topics, let me like throw some comedy in there, but also let me give some truth to where people can hear my heart on stuff. So if you disagree, that's fine, but give me 10, 15 minutes to talk about whatever issue it is. Like my first episode was talking about the NBA and how they sat out, and I disagreed with them on coming back so soon. And I felt like they didn't get much accomplished. I know that they're happy with what they got, but in my view, and I expressed why and things like that. Instead of just throwing something on Twitter and then people are like, oh man, you just hating or you just doing whatever. Like, nah, check out the show, see my thoughts. I'm well-rounded, man. I'm a little bit of everything. And as far as the music, yeah, man, Crooked 10 was good, man. But we've moved on. We're a lot better. And I would say this real quick. One thing you said was, artists, you guys being producers, artists being serious. I would encourage any artist is like, bruh, like forget even the money aspect, the marketing aspect. This is how you know if you're serious or not beyond anything else. If somebody, Rico, D-Ray, asks you, hey, bro, it's October 2nd, right? What have you done in the last 30 days? Forget what people can see. How much writing have you done? How much, you say you want to be a singer, you want to be a rapper, bro. How have you gotten better? Who are you studying? What are you doing? This is all this free stuff. How are you taking advantage of the free stuff? And if you can't say, as soon as they say, well, you know, you ain't serious. You know what I'm saying? If you're not like, bro, if you're not grinding, if you're not working on your craft, if you're not like, you know, like Kobe talked about that mama mentality, man, if you don't want it, then you don't, like Jay-Z said, oh, I get it. Hustling ain't you. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to do it for a hobby, cool. But if you're serious about this, bro, like I'm serious about, I'm coming for cats' heads, bro. And cats can hear it in the music.
It ain't too many people that can say, because one thing about me, I'm a private guy.
Right.
Most of the people that say they know me don't really know me.
Facts.
Because if you ain't never spent the night at my house,
right.
This cat has spent the night at my house,
We've been
around my family, out of town. Listen, this cat will write. We working on, while I'm mixing songs down, he going to the next joint, getting ready to jump back up and record again. And I love the fact, man, he got a strong work ethic. And we got this new project, man, that's coming. We don't know what it's titled yet, but if you go check out Crooked 10, Crooked 10 dope, right? But we had to pull the plug on it because we was gonna work on it forever. You know what I'm saying? But what we're doing now gonna dwarf that, man. I definitely gonna support you, Vaughn. Like, because I know your heart, man. Regardless, I like underdogs, man. You know, and the cat that everybody else, man, fire on and don't like, man, I love them cats. Right. You know, especially when I know where you're coming from. Right. You know, and where your mindset is, because now everything that you was talking about in 2017, and you get on Facebook, man, and you talking about it, like we seeing this stuff happen right now. Right. It's happening right now. You know, it's right now. So we glad you came on, bro. You know,
thank you for having me, brothers.
We're gonna have you back again, and great conversation, man. Well-rounded conversation. D-Ray, any last words?
You know, we were talking about the Matrix earlier, and just listening to Vaughn talk, I was reminded, and some of the things Vaughn said, I was reminded of one of my favorite lines out of the Matrix that came from Cornel West, portraying one of the council members when he said comprehension is not requisite for cooperation. You know, sometimes, man, you spend too much time trying to understand, and everything ain't for your understanding. You know, sometimes you just got to get on board. You know, this is if these guys are ethical, if this is where God is telling you to be, don't sit there trying to understand it. Just go. You know what I mean? So hats off to you, brother.
Man, repeat that quote again. Repeat that again. That's not good. What's that again?
Now I got to go watch the movie again.
Yeah, that was in Matrix. I think it's Revolutions. Yeah, when the army was coming in, comprehension is not requisite for cooperation.
Listen, we're gonna end the show on that. Comprehension
is not requisite.
Not requisite
for cooperation.
For cooperation, basically meaning.
Your understanding don't matter.
You ain't got to understand. Just get on board.
Right.
God bless.
Hey.